it's a give and a take, right?
It's a balance.
It's an argument. So this is why we need the left and we need the right. And then they argue with each other so that we can find
a balance in between,
so we can figure out what needs to happen. You've got a jester and you've got a king that's serious and wants to hold certain things sacred, right? But you've got a jester who needs to poke fun at the sacred.
Chaos and order.
Yeah, and the good.
Hello and welcome to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis.
I'm Michael.
And we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. Michael, why are we here?
Today we are talking about Jordan Peterson's Exodus seminars. This is episode 12 that we are.
Turns out that a book is more durable than stone. It's more durable than a castle. It's more durable than an empire.
So many young people don't get married, and many, even more than they, don't have children because they don't want to sacrifice their freedom and their independence and so on. But I just realized I have a new answer to all these young people. And that is, do you realize how much you're sacrificing if you don't get married and don't have children? No matter what you do, you sacrifice.
I will admit that I did not understand, actually, I think, what was going on with the tabernacle until I read Maps and Meaning.
We're talking about, and we're just using it as kind of a jumping off point for our own discussion. Not necessarily that you have to go watch it in order to listen to our discussion, but it seemed most of the time throughout this episode, they talk a lot about the tabernacle and the clothing that the priest wears. That seemed like that was kind of central to what they talked about in this episode. First off, they kind of get into sacrifice and faith, which sacrifice is a buzzword for Jordan Peterson. He loves to talk about sacrifice, giving up something now for something that's in the future. And he'll talk about how just going to school is a sacrifice. You're sacrificing your time now so that you can do better in the future. But then they got into faith in the sense that many things that we do, having kids, getting married.
Yes. It's all kind of sacrificial, right?
Yeah. We're sacrificing something, but also it's a faith that it's going to work out, in the future. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a level of faith to it. And I would say, getting a job is the same. Like you having faith that this is something that you are going to be able to do. You're having faith that this is something that you want to pursue, because the future's unknown, right?
Yeah. And so giving up your time when you do a job, you're giving up time. You're just because, and most people we've talked about this before, but most people don't like their job. Most people hate their job. Mm-hmm. And so they're just going to it and going through the motions, but it's supposed to be a sacrifice in the now for something better in the future. So you're sacrificing going to this job at 9 to 5 or whatever, and you get a paycheck that will provide for you in the future. And they talk about kind of letting go of what you think is important now. They talk about it at the same time they're talking about sacrifice. And, it opens up doors, because I personally have had to give up something that was important to me recently. And I think it's slowly opening up doors to other things, opportunities for other things. I don't know if you've had the same kind of thing happen where the thing that you think is important now may not be important.
Well, this is exactly what happens when you leave the steady job that's hourly pay and that consistent paycheck. And I jumped from that into sales, which is you don't know if you are going to get a paycheck. It's really kind of you're you're having faith that your hard work is going to pay off
Mm-hmm.
in sales rather than getting that steady paycheck.
So there's a lot of faith in sales that you
A lot of faith
have
in
to
that. Now,
faith
I mean,
in yourself. You have to have faith in yourself to be able to do that, right?
for sure. But also as you take that leap of faith, and a lot of people will talk about like building a business, going out
Mm-hmm.
on their own, building a business. Like there's a lot of different things where people like take that leap of faith, and sometimes it works out really well, but then other times, or sometimes they may fall down on their face, but then other times they'll look back and be like, I wish that I had done it sooner. I wish that I could have known how amazing this was going to be.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like starting a YouTube channel too. It's like, I've said this in the past. I wish we started this 10 years ago.
A long time ago.
We'd be further along. It goes back to what we've said before. It's like you if you got an idea, a creative endeavor, maybe execute it as soon as you can instead of sitting on it.
Yeah, just this idea that you have to, well, you got to wait, you got to make sure that the everything's correct,
all your ducks are in a row, kind of thing.
Yeah, Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about this, where he's just like, nothing's gonna ever be perfect. Even he is every once in a while he'll produce something that's not quite perfect, and he gets a lot of hate for it. He's like, I'm producing. One had a typo. Oh no. The world's coming to an end. Like I said something a little bit off or wrong, and it ended up online. It's just like
his Instagram is on fire. Like I love his Instagram. It's so great.
It's just such great stuff. Yeah.
So he's always saying really positive things, and really positive things with one of the most, what do you call it? Dry wit and filthy mouth. It's so great.
I loved it when he's like being interviewed and he says the F word, and the lady's just like, oh, my daughter's in the audience. He's like, you know who I am. Why in the world? Like, if you had a problem with my language, why in the world did you bring her here? He's just like, he kind of just scolds her for a second. He's just like, hey, you know what? That's on you. If you had a problem with it, because I haven't hid who I am and what I like, how I talk.
Yeah.
Ever. For no one. So anyway, that's just funny. But yeah, taking that leap of faith. Some people will say, yeah, they should have done it a long time ago. Like we've talked about starting a YouTube channel a long time ago. Sometimes it can be scary to kind of make that leap. And that's the point of sacrifice and faith, is that, yeah, you are sacrificing something, right? And in the ancient times, it's like you're sacrificing a calf, right? There's a lot of possibility in this calf. It could grow up and feed a lot of people.
Well, feed.
Right? Like there's all these things.
Well, and it was expensive. Like for these ancient
people, it was expensive.
It was like an expensive sacrifice. And people think of it as basically archaic, but it's more metaphorical. It's like they weren't really maybe they were actually sacrificing calves. But the point is that it's something important to you now that you're sacrificing for the future, that you're offering up to God and going, I'm giving this to you so that I can have more in the future. And
to be clear, they didn't waste it. They ate it.
They ate it.
Like they would eat it. A lot of people, I think that they did not eat the meat.
Yeah.
But they do. They did eat the meat. Jordan Peterson goes off on this a lot, talking about that we were one of the great things that put humans ahead of their other primates, cousins, is basically that we figured out that we could sacrifice something in the now for something better in the future.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that, and if you think about it, throughout the animal kingdom, that's not something they might instinctively do, something that kind of helps them out down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But none of them really know that if we're giving something up now, we're buying something better in the future.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is
the animal
human
kingdom.
creativity
Yeah.
endeavor.
They don't save, like wolves don't save food. They eat it right then. When they kill, yeah.
Like it's something crazy, like
They'll
10 pounds.
they'll gorge
they can
themselves.
gorge themselves. Exactly. They'll just eat it until it's all gone.
Yeah. And then they'll burn that off. Like for 3 days, they won't have anything else. And then come up. So it's like lions do the same thing. So, it is a very human thing to do your sacrifices in the here and now for the future of something better.
You said something archaic, and they kind of got into this a little bit, was sacrifice being archaic, and then Jordan Peterson mentions that people think about the tabernacle and like building a temple or something like that, a house of God. Like, why does God need a house? That sometimes is archaic. When you do something that's central like that, and the tabernacle, they talk a lot about the tabernacle in this episode. When you do something that's kind of central, you allow for there to be a gathering of the people, right? So you kind of, in that sense, you kind of unify the people around something. Now temples were almost very much like a castle in a sense.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just a house of worship, but it was also a house of protection. I think it's huge. It's huge for something. They talk a little bit about the exodus that we've seen outside of religious institutions, people just being like, oh, well, I'm just spiritual, but they don't go to.
You mean the people leaving religiosity pretty much.
Yeah, but there's something to be said for people to gather, worship together in something.
So this is very interesting because movie buffs, if they're really into movies, their religion is going to the movie theater, and it is a communal experience, watching something for the first time with other people, and you have, it may be a small revelry, but it is revelry. And it is important to those people, and it's almost like the same thing. And I've equated it to the same thing because there's been times in my life where I've just had amazing experiences at the movie theater, just seeing something for the first time and going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And Jordan Peterson said this in the past too. When you go to a concert and you feel the communal energy, it's almost the same as going to a religious revival of some kind, or religious meeting. It's the same. It's something about being in the room with other people with a sole focus of one thing that makes it special. And as movie theaters close, as people leave religions, I think this might be one of the issues that our society has with the mental health issues, is because these things aren't being done anymore. People aren't doing these things anymore. I mean, I try to go every once in a while to the movie theater, and sometimes it's packed and sometimes there's nobody there. And either way, it's fine. But as movie theaters close, as people leave religions, you have less and less opportunities for this communal thing.
And unfortunately, it seems like the more people exit religions, the more politics become people's religions. I'm not a fan of that. I think that's exactly why politics have become so central to everybody, is because they've switched out their religion for politics. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's healthy that we've gotten to this point.
I've never been to a political rally, but I would imagine that a political rally has the same kind of energy that going to a gospel church would have.
Possibly there might be some of that same aspects of it. Well, and I think that's probably one of the reasons that political rallies have kind of turned into almost like a concert. Like the rah and the energy. And it could be because it's kind of started to adopt into the religious. going from that, Ben Shapiro talked a little bit about, he's been reading these scriptures. He goes through and reads them every year since he was 12. But he never quite understood it, like why it was talking so much about the tabernacle and like the levels of holiness and into the Holy of Holies, which is where the Ark of the Covenant is kept, and never quite understood it until he read Maps of Meeting, where Peterson talked about, like, you have a glass cup and you don't explain to your child
what it looks so like.
What it looks like,
the function of it. Yeah.
Right. But if they're going to knock it off and break it, you just tell the child, stay away from this cup. Right. Yeah. And it just seems like there might've been something along those lines of, like, the Holy of Holies was only allowed basically one person, I think, into it. So it was completely standoff, right? Like, no one got to touch the cup, in a sense, the Holy of Holies.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you kind of learn more about that because the law is within the Holy of Holies. Sometimes you're just told, don't touch the cup, right? Because we're like the children of Israel, right? Don't touch the cup.
Well, it's like, you may not understand the reasons for the tradition. There's a reason there's a tradition in the sense of, like, you do that, like praying, like you pray.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, you're not going to understand why you pray.
Yeah.
So basically what they're saying is, like, you do the ritual, then you understand the ritual.
Yes.
You don't understand the ritual and then do the ritual. You just do it, and eventually you'll get to a point where you understand it. Right.
Right.
That's pretty much what they were talking about. Right.
Yeah. And I think because Prager he kind of talks about the way the tabernacle was built is it was kind of levels of holiness. So it's built within, and then in the center is the Holy of Holies, but basically levels of being able to get closer to the Holy of Holies.
Well, it represents human beings' levels of understanding, right? Of understanding God. So you don't understand God the same way as a child as you understand it as an adult.
Yeah. And as you tear down the outward holy, which is what he kind of talked about.
He kind of talks about cursing. He says, at some point, it was not good for us to curse regularly.
Yeah.
But nowadays, cursing is a normal thing for everyone. Like everybody's saying the F word all the time. And
I mean, we're obviously
guilty of it. Right? Yeah. But what he was trying to get, and he's guilty of it. I'm sure says curses. But Prager talks about, it's a start of the breakdown of society when you have the outlier become the norm.
Yeah, these outliers of holiness have been torn down.
He equated it to cursing. Like, he was just using an example because in the 1950s, you hardly ever heard the word fuck. But as time has gone by, you hear it from everyone. Yeah. In fact, I know a guy whose pauses in his sentence is the word fuck because he doesn't have anything else to use in the pauses in his sentences.
Yeah.
So he uses it that much, and it becomes nothing if you use it that much. So, and that this is like a slow deterioration of what was once considered a taboo. And so if you invite all the taboos to no longer be taboo, then this is where our society has gotten to. We are no longer a society that can say what's right and wrong. It's all about perspective.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of the study, but basically it's the broken window theory, I guess. But it's the broken window theory. If you have a house on the street, maybe somebody lives there, maybe they don't, but it's got a broken window. The idea is people are way more likely to walk by, pick up a rock, and break another window because there's already a broken window.
This is like a human nature thing.
Malcolm Gladwell, I love some of his books. I think it was Tipping Point. Where he points out, where he talks about New York's crime rate going down because what they started to do was crack down on the small things. right? So if somebody tagged,
this was in the 90s.
Yeah.
They're not doing that anymore.
Yeah. This is the 90s. So like they were able to bring down the crime rate a lot because of cracking down on
small
on the small things, cleaning up. So, and he used the broken window analogy. If you've got a subway and there's graffiti on the wall, then it's way easier to just drop your garbage, right
there.
Not find a garbage. Just like it's way easier to tag the wall some more. Right. Yeah. It's way easier. So it's a kind of a slippery slope. Like these little things start to, and then your crime rate is going up because now it's easier to assault somebody in a subway that's got graffiti all around it and garbage everywhere. I might as well assault somebody here. No big deal. Right. Like it's just
the structures of society break down slowly. And so it's like, your surroundings are broken down, maybe your crime starts up. It's kind of like a person who lets themselves go, right? They no longer, okay, so they're not dating, they're not going to find somebody, so they stop working out, you start eating crap, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they, and this causes like health issues, and so it's like we do that to ourselves, and then we do it to us in our society as well.
Yeah, and Prager, he points out the swearing thing because he's just like, this is kind of a first window broken thing.
Yeah.
Right. So now here's a house, one window is broken. Now it's so much easier to vandalize everything else in this house because one window's broken. Now we can break another window, and then we'll break another window. And pretty soon you're talking about why San Francisco should allow public nudity 100% of the time. Like
or California, you can steal like $900 worth of merchandise from a store and not be prosecuted.
And not get prosecuted. And now you can't get prosecuted. And pretty soon then you've got Walgreens with guards out front, and they're like, no, you can't come shop here, but what do you need? And we'll go grab it for you. And then
that's how
buy it.
Yeah.
Now that's what they're doing. Right.
Well, so, and one of the quotes that they say is, as society breaks down, the inhibiting factors of cursing go away, and that's why we have more people cursing on a regular basis. So when you take away the inhibiting factors, now it's escalated to crime. Like tattoos. Tattoos used to be a big taboo. Only sailors would have them, and now everybody has them. It's not shocking to see somebody with a tattoo anymore, even like a business person or whatever.
And it's not to say that these things are inherently bad. It just, to Dennis's point, is that these are they're little broken windows, right? They're just little things that kind of push the envelope, and something that starts to just affect everything. Maybe this is why we can't define what a woman is, like all these things that start to come up, and you're just like I said, I don't necessarily think that tattoos are bad or that swearing is bad.
Yeah, I don't either.
In and of themselves, it's just you start to break those things down, and maybe it's
well, and it's
show.
Yeah, and when you talk, like, I'll be talking to my children, and I'm like, well, the thing now to be a rebel now would be to not curse, not have tattoos, not have promiscuous sex. That would be the rebel thing to do, because that's become the norm.
Yeah.
At some point, Jordan Peterson tells a story about his nephew who was having night terrors, and it dealt with a dragon and everything. And then he asked him, well, what are you going to do about it? And he was like a 5 or 6 year old kid, and he, through his mind, through his imagination, he's like, well, I'm going to cut the dragon's throat and get to the box that kept the fire in it, and then turn that into a shield. And Jordan Peterson said, like, he did this all on his own.
He used his own imagination to figure out how he was going to get a shield, and then the shield was going to protect him from
the dragon. It was just interesting because this is all stuff that you and I love talking about, but it's like the thing that scares you is also got to be the thing that you battle in order to shield yourself from problems in life. They do talk about the story of St. George and the Dragon, and that's where that comes in. And the story of St. George and the Dragon isn't to convince children that there aren't monsters. It's to convince them to fight against monsters.
Yeah, it's a quote from G.K. Chesterton. Fairy tales do not tell children the dragons exist. Children already know that dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children the dragons can be killed. So that's a direct quote.
That's the direct quote.
They were paraphrasing it a little bit, but it's basically, yes, the point of fairy tales is to let children know that they can beat the dragon.
Yeah. And Jordan Peterson talks about this in psychotherapy. A good psychotherapist is going to make you face your fears. And he always talks about the woman who was scared of going out of her apartment because she thought she would die. And he said, well, the first thing he had to do was show her a picture of an elevator. And then he had to show her the real doors to the elevator. And then he had to show her the getting in the elevator. And it's like this slow process of facing the thing that frightens you.
Yeah. Like little by little, it's like, well, you can't get in the elevator, but maybe we can get feet away from the elevator and you can look inside. Is that something you can be brave enough to do? It's like, okay, we can do that. Okay, now tomorrow, maybe we won't go down the elevator, but maybe we'll get in it and then we'll get out. Okay, and that's maybe tomorrow we can do that. Right. And then slowly the person is getting braver. It's not that the task is easier now. It's that the person has gotten braver.
Yes. And it's not like they have less fear. They're just getting more brave. They're just continuing, and that kind of equals out, kind of diminishes the fear. And this is something that we should all be teaching our children. We should be teaching them to face the problems that they have instead of shy away from them. And most of our society tries to tell people to not.
You should not have to fight dragons. The dragons shouldn't exist. That's what society has started to say. It's like, no. You shouldn't have to, you shouldn't have to work hard. You are a human being. You should be given whatever is needed for you to be able to succeed in life. It's just a change of, it's like, but no, you can't do that because you always need, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a separation between certain ideologies, is just that one says, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And the other says, the government should give you what you need to pull yourself up. This is life. Life is, and this is a tale as old as time.
Yeah.
That fairy tales aren't there to teach children that there are dragons. Fairy tales are there to teach children they can kill the dragons.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're new to the channel, Michael and I both grew up in a Mormon polygamist compound, for lack of anything better to explain it as. And, we've left that altogether. And Prager talks about not being able to see God and live. Because most of the people that in the Old Testament don't actually see God. God doesn't allow them to see him.
And they kind of go back and forth on that a little bit. Ben Shapiro talks a little bit about how you're seeing God, but you're not seeing God in his
full form.
Or something along those lines.
I wanted to ask you, how does this mess with our understanding of Mormonism? Because we both grew up in Mormonism, and Joseph Smith claimed several times to have seen the personages of God and Jesus.
How does it mesh? Well, I mean, I guess you could say it doesn't mesh well with Judaism.
Can you think of a prophet of old that actually saw God?
But that's why it makes you wonder, is like, it's like, is Dennis and Ben holding on to a kind of type of dogma that somebody can't see God and live, or is it that, because I mean, I always thought that there were scriptures where basically people did see God and live, and it's the story of Jacob is very
well, the wrestling,
full of it analogy. And, it says he wrestled an angel, but then afterwards it says, I shall call this place Bethel because this is where I saw the face of God. Right. So it's like, all right,
there's some contradictions then.
There's a little bit of, so there's some contradictions there. And so it doesn't discredit the fact that, Joseph Smith comes along and is like, yeah, I saw God. Does beg the question for sure. Like, you're like, okay, well, does this jive with everything else?
Well, if you were to imagine a deity that created us, created the world, the universe, and his grand presence was so overwhelming that it would make sense that we would not be able to see him. Mm-hmm. Right? As mortals, as fallible beings, right? So it makes sense to me more that we would not be able to see him. But I don't know. There's so many contradictions of Joseph Smith's story. I just thought I'd ask you about this because it just was interesting that they talk about this, and then not being able to see God's face is kind of regular throughout the biblical corpus. So yeah. When you bring in a new religion like Joseph Smith did, I guess anything can go, right? You can just make it up whole cloth.
Sure, that's possible. And it could be that when there's like these kind of slight contradictions. Now, some people might argue that these aren't really contradictions in the Bible, of like, well, you can't see God and live, but then Jacob wrestles what we think was God, and maybe but then Moses sees God, and is he the only one that gets to see God? And that's kind of why Moses was such a big deal. It's like, okay, but then you have this religion that comes around and kind of picks a side. Maybe Joseph just like picked a side and then just like ran with it. Right. Because maybe there's some of these little contradictions, and it's like,
well, and this kind of dovetails into Prager talking about the holy.
Greg Horowitz kind of pokes fun at him about his undergarments.
So Judaism has a certain kind of undergarment that is actually seen, but it's not considered underwear. It's just like I forget what it's called.
Talit katan. Talit katan, probably.
Well, and it's basically a little fringy undergarment that Jews wear, and so
you see them throughout Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah,
they're kind of all hanging out
underneath their shirt,
from out under their shirts, and they're like all the men have them. And
this kind of plays into what is pejoratively called the Jesus jammies from the Mormons.
For Mormons, yeah, and Prager kind of stands up for Mormons, and he's just like, "Hey, you know what? They have this thing, and it's sacred to them, and I respect that." Well, probably because Judaism has this thing, and it's sacred to them,
and they respect it.
And
one could argue that Joseph Smith kind of stole it from Judaism, but I mean, either way,
possibly. Yeah, we don't quite know. But
the point is that it's sacred, and Prager is like, we shouldn't make fun of the sacred, no matter whose sacred it is.
Yeah.
So. And it gets poked fun at a lot, actually. Like comedy makes fun of it. Like you see, like now that it's like online and everybody kind of knows when we were growing up, it was considered taboo to even talk about their garments, what's called the garments. And so, but now everything's online, and so people are revealing it as this kind of like cult, like we have to stay with the cult,
another culty thing.
Another
this
like,
is culty.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but I mean that it's culty.
Well, and it goes into the bite model, and it's behavioral control is what it is.
Yeah.
It's like, we are going to control every aspect of your life, so you have to wear this special underwear so we as a religion can control you. And I'm really on the fence about this thing, because I agree with what Prager had to say. We should be not making fun of the sacred. At the same time, there's a culty aspect to it. So,
well, it's like, I mean, is it culty behavior because Ben Shapiro wears a yarmulke and respects that? Like, I mean, it's a tradition that he respects with his.
Well, it goes
religion.
Back to what we were talking about with tradition. When you break down traditions, then you bring in all the taboos, and then nothing is sacred. Nothing is holy. Everything's up for.
Well, and this is one of the things I've found with Mormon beliefs, who make fun of Mormon garments, who make fun of these things, is they'll make fun of all of them. They'll make fun of the yarmulke. They'll make fun of anything that's sacred.
What is it? The hijab, or what is it?
Hijab for Muslims.
Yeah,
they'll make fun of all of it. Right now, and that's kind of one of the things is like, when leaving Mormonism, it just seems like so much baby gets thrown out with the bathwater.
Yeah,
that it's like, it's not just at some point. It's not just Mormonism they're making fun of. They're making fun of anything sacred.
All of it.
And it's, and I get it. I do feel like the king's court needs a jester, because otherwise the king can take himself too seriously. Now, if the king kills the jester, then you've got a tyranny. You've got a tyrant. So, but at the same time, it's a give and a take, right? It's a
balance.
It's a balance.
Shouldn't there be some kind of balance in our? Yeah.
It's an argument. It's a swaying and an argument. This is why we need the left and we need the right. And then they argue with each other so that we can find a balance
in between.
So we can figure out what needs to happen. You've got a jester and you've got a king that's serious and that wants to hold certain things sacred, right? But you've got a jester who needs to
make fun of the sacred,
right? Who needs to poke fun at the sacred, right? But then it's a yin and a yang. They've got to find a balance. And it's good to have the king that holds something sacred, but it's also good to have the king that can laugh at their own
seriousness,
laugh at their own shortcomings,
laugh at their hubris,
right? This was such a great point in the Phantom of the Opera, where the Phantom takes himself so seriously that when the jester pokes fun at him, he grabs the jester and strangles him to death.
Yeah.
Right. That's tyranny.
That's tyranny.
Right.
So there's always got to be this balance. There's always, it's the chaos and order.
Yeah. And the good king, I feel like, doesn't take himself too seriously, but also the good king holds
respect.
Yeah. Holds a respect for the sacred, but also that's the point of the jester, is to be able to take the king down a notch. So if the king is taking himself too seriously, the jester's there to bring him down a notch. You're human too. Right? Like, and that was kind of the point of kings having a king of kings, or a god, or a religion, or
to hold to a higher standard. Yeah.
A higher standard. There's something out there in the ether, the Murdoch that would be taken outside the walls of the Marduk that would be taken outside the walls of the city, and
you'd be stripped down and slapped
and slapped and humiliated, and then he had to give recompense of all the things that he could have done better. And that's one of the oldest traditions that we have of a king, oldest traditions that we have of a kingship.
Could you imagine if we did that with our presidents?
Exactly. Well,
I mean, comedians are supposed to point out. Comedians are supposed to point out when the presidents are not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, Trump's not taking himself too seriously, so he went out there with a garbage man's outfit on.
Yeah,
I thought it was hilarious.
Thank you for joining us, audience. Check out our social media, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just look for The Sword in the Skull.
Subscribe and comment below. Tell us what you think. Give us your input of the sacred versus the mockery. Yeah.
In the meantime, keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, learn more. Thanks, brother. We'll see you.
See ya.